Oh, hello, yeah. Well, we have arrived at Friday, I'm very pleased to say. Now, I do have a sort of trigger warning for you. I might be asking awkward questions, but after all, someone's got to ask awkward questions, haven't they? There were lots of awkward questions around yesterday. In Exhibit A, I'll give you, perhaps following up from something earlier in the week, George Gilbert, he of thrown out of a Big Brother household, who was doing the rounds with various people like Dan Wootton. Yes, indeed. Anyway, it appears that he's no longer a parish councillor because a few days ago, well, his local parish council thought that his behaviour was a little bit, well, not great, so that doesn't appear to be in his bio anymore. So I imagine that he's once again rooting for probably the thing that he was always after, which is basically to get people to pay him money to be a bigot. I can only guess. Again, I'm asking those awkward questions. Is that real or not? I don't know. But somebody's got to ask awkward questions, haven't they? Anyway, let's listen to George himself in just the beginning of the Dan thing.
From, and here's the line that got me, the straw that broke the camel's back. Okay, I could have used better words. Maybe my tone was off a bit. But at the end of the day, I'm a 23-year-old boy. I don't like blaming circumstances. I'm not giving excuses, but we live in a democracy, right? Now, one of the main pillars of a democracy is freedom of speech. That involves asking questions, even if they are a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, so he's just a 23-year-old boy. We can't, we can't expect him to really know what he's talking about at 23, can we? Definitely not. And, he's just asking questions, a bit like people do, just asking questions. And surely people can be mature enough, even though he's not, to actually be able to deal with that. Yeah. Anyway, Dan Wootton, with no sense of irony, then says, isn't it ironic that Big Brother, the show, has got rid of him? Well, no, you see, because it's not about cancel culture, Dan. It's about the cameras. That's what the Big Brother bit means. I'm sorry you don't understand that. Anyway, George, yeah. So here he is, in his own words. He's way too young to know about these things, but at the same time, he's big enough to be able to say things. And if you can't deal with what he's saying, that's your problem. Even though he might have slightly missaid things. But let's watch him on TikTok, because he does have his own YouTube channel as well. So let's watch him here.
Let's talk about why Generation Z are flocking like bees around honey to Christianity. Young people are soft and weak. Gen Z prefer the idea of a dictatorship to a democracy. Today, we live in a very selfish world. The community-spirited, trust-based society that we used to have of yesteryear is on life support. What about the feminisation of men? That's a big one. Because I can honestly count on one hand the amount of male role models there are out there who can help guide men like myself. But Christianity fills this void. And anyone who doesn't get that, well, as far as I'm concerned, you've got a bit of evolving to do. My generation is also described as the spiritual generation. So guys, a new Andrew Tate video's just dropped, so gotta shoot. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.
Yeah, well, I had no idea about the Andrew Tate thing there. I don't know if he's being sarcastic or not. I have the feeling not. Because with so many of these people, and, I was amazed to see Paul Joseph Watson still flogging very expensive vitamins pills to people on Dan Wootton as well. These people have been operating now for a decade, right? Okay, and it's obvious that George basically wants to get in on the act, and yeah. So you just end up ticking boxes about things. About, well, we're all good Christians, aren't we? No, patently none of you are. Okay, and we're too young to really know what we're doing. No, you're in your 20s, and I don't think it's a good enough excuse. If you were 5, maybe. If you were 8, maybe. But you're not. And of course, there's the whole crisis of masculinity. Isn't it dreadful? And George, poor old George, is the victim. No, you're not, George. Sorry, but you're just not. Or am I wrong about that? I don't know. I'm just asking questions. But this has gone a lot further yesterday, because it ties into this notion of when exactly it is that somebody is allowed to be a bigot. And the answer with George and various other people is whenever they want to be because the media will give them a free ride. There was that classic story from America about young Republicans, young being actually quite a lot of people in their 30s, which is important in just a second, who, were basically messaging each other about how much they really, really liked, that great Adolf Hitler, and they didn't really like Jewish people, and they certainly didn't like brown people, and they weren't too keen on girls of the wrong sort either. Oh, and let's not forget gay and trans. Goes without saying, doesn't it? Anyway, having had these messages leaked, the good old US of A vice president, who's only basically about 6 or 7 years older than some of the people in these groups, was saying that they're just kids. So that's okay then, because you're allowed to be a bigot if you're under 40. Well, I don't know, because you see lots of times in the UK we come across bigots as well that are over 60. So are you allowed only to have a rational view and a reasonable, I'm an okay and decent human being and I can actually get my head round empathising with others between the ages of 40 and 60? In which case, hey, I'm out of that and I can do anything I like because you have to forgive me because I don't know what I'm saying anymore. And you can see how pathetic that sounds. Except, of course, within this own little media ecosystem, it really doesn't. Because, after all, there's lots and lots of money to be made from very, very gullible little boys. Because so many of these people basically operate on Patreon accounts which are subscribed to by people between the ages of 14 and 16. I know this full well. I'm a special needs teacher. But it astounds me that we allow these people to operate and we allow them to make money. I don't think we should. I don't know. You might not want there to be, regulation of social media, but one has to ask the question why it is that Dan Wootton and Paul Joseph Watson and the Lotus Eaters and all the rest of them are so against such things. Shouldn't we be, protecting the children? After all, I'm just asking questions, which is always acceptable, isn't it? Unless, of course, you're a minority group that we don't like. In which case, if you do get a bit uppity about it, well, you're just a snowflake, aren't you? And don't say anything to us, otherwise we'll be the victim. Yes, the cry of the bully everywhere. Anyway, it'd be worthwhile keeping a little eye on aforementioned George Gilbert and see where exactly he ends up. I imagine that he'll neatly sidle his way into that particular ecosystem, which was probably the idea in the first place. But there are also questions I think that Big Brother need to answer in and around these kind of chances. He was always going to do that because he thinks it's funny, and anyway, if the going gets tough, he can always just hide behind his mum, can't he? Valiant warriors for the truth that they all are. Anyway, do have a lovely Friday if you can do, and remember, there's a very good chance at your age you're not responsible anymore, so feel free.